Plenum cables are specifically designed for use in plenum spaces, which are areas used for environmental air circulation, such as the space above a suspended ceiling or under a raised floor. Because these spaces can distribute air throughout a building, it is crucial to use materials that do not produce excessive smoke or toxic fumes when burned. Plenum cables are manufactured with a special insulation that meets stringent fire safety standards. The National Electrical Code, or NEC, outlines the requirements for plenum cables in Article 725.154 for Class 2 and Class 3 circuits and Article 800.113 for communications circuits, and other relevant articles. The most common type of plenum cable is CMP, or Communications Multipurpose Plenum. This designation indicates that the cable meets the fire resistance and low smoke production requirements for plenum spaces. It's essential to distinguish between CMP cables and other types of cables, such as CM Communications Multipurpose, CMR Communications Multipurpose Riser, and CMG Communications Multipurpose General Purpose. These other cable types are designed for different applications and do not possess the same fire safety characteristics as CMP cables. Using a non-plenum cable in a plenum space can create a significant fire hazard. When a fire occurs, the insulation on non-plenum cables can release large amounts of smoke and toxic gases, which can quickly spread throughout the building via the air circulation system. This can impede visibility, making it difficult for occupants to evacuate safely and can expose them to harmful substances. It is important to consider several factors when evaluating information about plenum cables. Firstly, the material composition of the cable is critical. Plenum cables are typically insulated with Teflon or other fluoropolymers that are resistant to burning and produce minimal smoke. The specific materials used can affect the cable's performance and cost. Secondly, the cable's fire rating is a key consideration. The NEC requires that plenum cables meet specific fire test standards such as UL 910, also known as the Steiner tunnel test. This test measures the flame spread and smoke density of the cable when exposed to fire. Thirdly, the proper installation techniques for plenum cables are essential. Cables should be supported properly to prevent them from sagging or becoming damaged. It is also important to avoid overbending or kinking the cables, as this can compromise their performance. Fourthly, understanding the specific requirements of the NEC is vital. The NEC provides detailed guidelines for the use of plenum cables in different applications. It is essential to consult the NEC to ensure that installations comply with all applicable requirements. Fifthly, the labeling and identification of plenum cables should be clear and accurate. Plenum cables are typically marked with the CMP designation to indicate that they meet the requirements for plenum spaces. It is important to verify that the cables are properly labeled before installation. Sixthly, the potential for electromagnetic interference, or EMI, should be considered. Plenum cables can be susceptible to EMI from nearby electrical equipment. Shielded plenum cables are available to reduce the effects of EMI. Seventhly, the cost of plenum cables can be higher than that of non-plenum cables. However, the increased safety and performance of plenum cables make them a worthwhile investment for plenum spaces. Eighthly, the compatibility of plenum cables with different types of connectors and termination hardware should be verified. It is important to use connectors and hardware that are specifically designed for use with plenum cables. Ninthly, the long-term reliability of plenum cables should be considered. Plenum cables are designed to withstand the environmental conditions in plenum spaces, such as temperature variations and humidity. It is important to select cables that are known for their durability. Tenthly, the potential for damage to plenum cables from rodents or other pests should be addressed. Plenum spaces can be attractive to rodents, which can chew on cables and cause damage. Using cable trays or other protective measures can help to prevent damage from pests. In addition to these considerations, it is also important to be aware of common misconceptions about plenum cables. One misconception is that all cables installed in plenum spaces must be plenum rated. While this is generally true, there are some exceptions. For example, metal conduit can be used to protect non-plenum cables in plenum spaces. Another misconception is that Plenum cables are completely fireproof. While Plenum cables are highly resistant to fire, they are not immune to burning. If exposed to a sufficiently intense fire, Plenum cables can still ignite. Another common error is to assume that cable ties used in Plenum spaces are inherently Plenum rated. Cable ties must be specifically listed for Plenum use to ensure they do not contribute to smoke or flame spread. Another misconception is thinking that all low-voltage cables are automatically Plenum rated. Low voltage does not equate to Plenum rated. The cable jacket's material determines its suitability for Plenum spaces. It is essential to check the cable's markings for CMP or another approved Plenum rating. Ignoring proper grounding and bonding procedures with Plenum cables can lead to electrical noise and safety hazards. Grounding and bonding should follow NEC guidelines to ensure proper function and safety. Always follow the manufacturer's instructions for installing and terminating Plenum cables. Improper installation can compromise the cable's fire resistance and performance. Bending cables beyond their specified bend radius can damage the conductors and insulation, reducing their effectiveness. Exceeding the maximum pulling tension during installation can also cause damage. Using the wrong tools for stripping and terminating Plenum cables can damage the insulation and conductors, affecting their performance and safety. Always use tools specifically designed for the type and size of cable being installed. Mixing different types of cables in the same conduit or cable tray can create problems with heat dissipation and electromagnetic interference. Follow NEC guidelines for separating different types of cables. Neglecting to properly support Plenum cables can cause them to sag or become damaged over time. Use cable supports and hangers that are suitable for Plenum spaces and comply with NEC requirements. Failing to inspect Plenum cables regularly can allow damage or deterioration to go unnoticed. Regular inspections can identify problems before they become serious safety hazards. It is crucial to stay updated in the latest changes to the NEC and other relevant codes and standards. These codes and standards are constantly evolving to reflect new technologies and best practices. Consulting with qualified electrical professionals can help ensure that Plenum cable installations are safe and compliant. Electrical contractors and engineers have the expertise to design and install Plenum cable systems that meet all applicable requirements. To summarize, Plenum cables are a critical component of fire safety in buildings with Plenum spaces. It is essential to understand the requirements for Plenum cables and to avoid common misconceptions and errors. By following the guidelines outlined in the NEC and other relevant codes and standards, it is possible to ensure that Plenum cable installations are safe, reliable, and compliant. The information provided is intended for general guidance only and should not be considered as substitute for professional advice. Always consult with qualified professionals for specific applications and installation. Remember to check local codes and regulations, as they may vary from national standards. Lastly, remember to document all installations thoroughly. Accurate records can help with future maintenance and troubleshooting.